Hello, everyone. My name is Amro Aglan. I'm a cardiology fellow at Rochester Medical Center in New York. And it's a great pleasure to have today with me Dr. Milind Desai, who is the Vice Chair of Education. And he is the director of both HCM Center and Aortic Disease Center, as well as the Vice Chair of Cardiovascular Imaging at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. Welcome, Dr. Desai.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. So today it's actually, we just came from a session where he presented a very novel work in HCM, which is the first in-human gene therapy in HCM patients. We have seen a lot of great things about new treatments for HCM this ACC. Congratulations for this great work, Dr. Desai. And I'll just start off with saying, like, how do you think this first in-human gene therapy is going to be different from the therapies we're already using for HCM, including the cardiac myosin inhibitors?
Thank you again for having me here. Yes, so we are living in exciting times as it relates to hypertrophic cardiomyopathy with a lot of new stuff happening, including, like you mentioned, cardiac myosin inhibitors, a lot of diagnostic advances being made, and now I think we are also pushing the envelope with gene therapy. As you very well know, this is an adenovirus-based gene therapy where the genetic material is infused into the patient. This is cardio-specific. So the hope is not the hope, but hope and expectation is DNA turns into RNA, RNA turns into the missing protein in these mutation positive. This is specifically for myosin binding protein C3 mutation. So it replenishes the missing proteins. These missing proteins are the ones that are responsible for a lot of the downstream pathophysiology, pathology related to these group of patients. So if the concept works, then the hope is in the future, we may be able to halt or slow the progression of disease. And so this is, the way I look at it, it is precision medicine in its purest form.
Yep, I absolutely agree with that. As we learn from you and from like all the HCM experts we have, is like HCM is a very diverse disease. It's a very big spectrum of like a lot of gene defects, and also like we know like clinical phenotypes and imaging phenotypes. So what are the eligible patients that you are trying to recruit to the trial? Are there any specific patient population you're?
Yeah, so the trial we are talking about is the MYBPC3-1 trial, which this is strictly for pathogenic or likely pathogenic mutations, truncating mutations in myosin binding protein C3. So it is not for all HCM patients. Obviously, we are in novel treatment, so you need to have a symptomatic patient. And we are not at a point where we are going to be testing children with this. So these are the patients that are eligible are symptomatic patients with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, obstructive or non-obstructive. Now we have eliminated the need for having an ICD because the early experience is that it is it is safe. And adults symptomatic hypertrophic cardiomyopathy in NYHA class 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. This actually takes me to the next point. So you presented the early results of the MYBPC1 trial with 3 patients at this phase. How was the experience of you like treating the 3 patients? What do you think about the safety, the tolerability? Like any comments on that?
Yeah, so this is an entirely new experience for the community, right? And so planning the logistics of the process. How many days do you admit the patients? When do you admit? What is the sequence of events? What is the immunosuppression protocol? What is the tapering protocol? When should we be doing biopsies? Should we be doing biopsies? How many biopsies? So all these logistic things have to be thought through. Think about it as you are trying to send a human to the moon for the first time. What are the logistics? You have to think and make sure you have thought about every step, and then be ready for anything that potentially goes sideways. Because you are admitting a person, you are giving them a lot of investigational product, and then you are immunosuppressing them, so they are in a full blast immunosuppression for a period of time. which can impact the liver, which can impact the blood cell, and it can leave these folks very vulnerable to super infections. So we have to plan for everything, and I think that's the learning message here. So and I think we've learned a lot, to enough to sort of be able to adapt our thinking. Like, for example, the ICD, for example, expanding to the full spectrum of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So there, and we are adjusting the frequency of blood tests. We are to make sure we are monitoring immunosuppression. We are adjusting the duration of immunosuppression. So a lot of new things we are learning.
Yep. Okay, so I know it's a little bit too early, but from your presentation, we can tell that there's a very early hint of some improvements. Like these patients.
At this point of time, this is a phase 1A study. So the only things that we are looking for is safety and feasibility. Okay, and what happens to the pharmacodynamics if it is an investigation product? The dynamics. We should not be talking about efficacy. So anything that we see is very early extrapolations.
Yep, perfect. That's a very good message. And this actually makes us look forward to what is coming next, to what are the next steps in terms of recruitment, in terms of dosing, etc.
Yeah, and the next steps, so essentially, we are taking it very deliberately and slowly. So after every patient is dosed, the next one does not get dosed till we have made sure this one is okay. And with the DSMB and the safety monitoring committee, they have looked at the full spectrum of the data and they are happy. And then we move on to the next one. So this is being done in a fairly methodical, deliberate manner.
That's great. I do have a final question. Especially actually now in this ACC, we have seen a lot of either fellows or young attendings who are very interested in HCM. As an expert, do you have any advice or any sort of good tips for new residents, fellows who actually want to do HCM as a career or have an interest in HCM research, especially at this time?
Well, I mean, look, like everything else, you have to put in the effort. There's nothing, nothing comes without putting in the effort. And you have to put in the effort of understanding the disease. You can approach it from a imaging perspective. You can approach it from a heart failure perspective. You can approach it from a genetic perspective. But you have to take time to understand. And then you have to be there. Look, most of us in this field, certainly I speak for myself when I say this, I'm not a basic scientist. I'm not even a translational reader.